Defected Broadcasting House with me, Surf Kombo, Sondela special, collaborating with a good long-term friend of mine and also label owner, introvert, been in this music for a while. Very happy to invite him because he's been out of the country for a bit. It's Aluku Rebels. How you doing?
Thank you. Yes, Seth Kombo. Nice to see you after 3 years.
Yeah,
long
3
time.
years.
But
3
thank
years.
you for having me, man.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you here. And, we use this as a platform for all styles of electronic music from the continent, a coin that you've you've been putting out there for a very long time, and discovering different styles of music from the continent. You've also been over to South Africa and Botswana and been able to absorb it. And now your present journey has taken you over to Bali. But before we get into that, just kind of get into what Aluku Rebels is all about and why you're here today.
Well, it all started off just being passionate about a sound, that you're involved with, especially Afro House. At the time, it wasn't even Afro House. It was under Soulful, you remember. It was the Osalades, BBE, the Bodhisattva style, Anane with Nulu Records, Justin Imperial, Nick Holder stuff, It was just getting into sounds, more underground, newer sounds. I was a big lover of percussion music and house music anyway. I used to rave to house music from when I was 15 years of age. So to hear stuff that was combined together and to hear percussions that were more authentic rolling and more kind of got soul and bass line and stuff, it just resonated really, from there. It happened at a time at Club Matter, with the late Phil Asher, and he was playing Sunday Showers by Kentonic, if you remember. And as soon as I heard that track, I was like, wow, what is this? And he kind of opened it up to me. He told me about Aphrodisia, MP3. He told me to look on TrackSource, and you just keep digging, finding stuff. And I just built a catalogue up before I was even DJing. I was just collecting music because I used to like buying CDs and compilation stuff a lot. And then going into the digital world, you're putting stuff on like, iPods and all the rest, just transferring it over on MP3. And yeah, 2010, I just had all this music and I thought, okay, let's just try and mix it. Let's try and mix it up and try give it a go,
Yeah, and
how
how was that process for you? Like, learning how to mix it. Now you're a consumer of the music. Now it's about putting it together and telling the story that you're telling, you're learning and telling yourself. Now you want to tell it to a crowd. What was that like for you?
It was, when you're a bedroom DJ, you're in your own world. As you said, like introverted, you're just in your own bubble, your own world, just play music. You don't know how it's going to resonate, connect with people. You're just giving it a go. Just like anyone else who starts a podcast or starts a mix on SoundCloud, you combine music and you just hope you have an audience that can maybe engage to it and like what you're liking at the same time. And it was just very lucky, especially with the podcast show, because how the South African youngsters just jumped on my podcast was just like, it gave me more confidence to keep playing and pushing more, and it was interesting because, I wanted to always do something different to a normal podcast show. You had stuff that was like, how can I put it? People do like a mix one or mix two or podcast, whatever. I wanted to theme and structure things more like a story, like it was a tell. Like I was going through history, African history stuff, especially when you're pushing African artists, and kind of structuring a mix that it's like, let's treat this like it's a movie.
Right.
Like, remember on a lot of the mixes was atmospheric wildlife sounds at the time, which, it could sound quite ignorant now to use jungle sounds in African music. But that's how I done it. It was like I was trying to put this journey structural stuff together. And yeah, that was it. The audience came. And then you get offered to go South Africa and you're scared to go because you're like, I don't even play in clubs. Why do they want me to come South Africa? So you're getting scared. So I guess, it just escalates from there. And then the label was another chapter from there. And then you meet people like yourself and D Malice and, Kitty and loads of other people, Pablo Martinez. There's loads of people in the scene that you just come across, you share the same passion. And then you kind of just get through what you got to get through, So
and you said the next stage for you was doing Aluku Records, which is now in what release number?
Number 80, 88 now. 88.
So 88 releases down the line. The process of starting that. Why did you, after consuming all this music from all different labels, did you feel that it was your kind of turn to kind of do your thing in that space?
It was, once you have artists that you're familiar with that you see of like Nick Holder, the Capos, and then you see they've got other understudies around them. You see like artists that are underground have got other understudies, and then they're sending you music, and you're just playing on your podcast like underground bootlegs, unreleased stuff. And eventually I saw labels started to release those releases, those artists. So it was like doing A&R work without even being an A&R. You're
Great.
releasing music of certain artists that, you know, haven't been exposed, but they're getting on labels. So there was like some sort of attraction. When you're pushing artists from the Nulus, from the Vegas, you know, from the Offering Recordings and Cabana Records, and, you know, so many labels we can go through, Penge and all the rest, you know, so many. It was a case of they were already looking at what you were doing anyway. So you was pushing unreleased stuff, and then some of these labels were actually releasing tracks that weren't released. And you was like, okay, you know, maybe I could do A&R work. That was why I wanted to move into a label aspect. It was like, you know, podcast was going so far. It was getting a bit of attention and a bit of hype and buzz, but it's like, okay, how can I give something more for artists on another level? And that's where the artists start, you know?
No, it's a beautiful thing because your 88 releases deep, and you've evolved from one of the biggest releases that's probably come from the UK and probably spread outside into SA, Count Your Blessings, up to the moments you have now where you have people like Frigid Armadillo, you have Tamanti on your label, you have also Da Capo doing stuff. And what's that process been like through the 88, and how do you think you've evolved and grown and, you know, got to the stage you are now where, you know, as a person as well, and your personal journey, how's it been for you, you know, putting that all together?
It's been an interesting one. I mean, from the start, you know, the sounds I was pushing predominantly from the start of the label at the start of 2014 was definitely more tribal, more ancestral. You know, it wasn't as electronic. It was more authentic stuff coming from Africa, in-house forms. And, you know, a couple of years later, it's like you can't keep going around in a circle. You know, you have to keep evolving. You know, there was a big emergence of Afro beats that came through. And it kind of, there was a stage where it kind of clashed with Afro House because it was quite similar. Because I remember, Seth, like there was times where I played in Elephant and Castle. I remember one event, it was an Afro beat. I think you was playing on that night as well. There was an Afro beat room and we had an Afro House room. And basically a couple of people came up to me and said, that was a great Afro beat set. That's when I knew there was a problem. This sound is now not identified as its Afro House as it was. So I thought we had to find new angles of where could we move this forward. We all knew about the Afro tech. It was always like a couple of tracks we might play with all the other stuff, or the deeper stuff and the deep tech stuff. I guess it was a stage where, okay, let's push more of the electronic to the front line now in the African form, then rather than the organic that's now kind of like lost in the Afro beat kind of direction. So it's just moving things forward, and all the other labels corresponded and did the same thing, I feel. And there was a few maybe doing it beforehand, but a lot more did it afterwards, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure you very much enjoyed the journey, and you know, I'd love to speak to you all day about so much things because there's been so much great stuff that's happened between our journey. But I want to come into now your journey to Bali, where you've now been there for a while. We've spoken, you know, off air about many things, but what some of your time in Bali and the things that have happened and changed during you getting there to now?
It was crazy because I took the risk. You know, COVID time in 2020 was a tough time for everyone, you know. I remember 2019 having so much prepared for 2020. I remember talking to a lot of people who were saying, you know, I'm going it for 2020. Everyone was ready for 2020. It was like a number in a year that everyone was ready to do stuff. And, you know, obviously we had, unfortunately, the COVID that came about, and, you know, things changed a lot and we became more isolated. So then that changed my aspect of how to release music. I was thinking, okay, there's no clubs open, so there's no point trying to release Club Vibe or Hyperdrive or banging clubbing tracks. It was like, okay, let's just go through emotions connection, like how I was feeling. I was just finding music I was connecting with on an introverted lockdown type of process. That's how Roaming the Day. It was a feel-good factor track. You know, it was a track that people needed to feel good. You couldn't release like the more aggressive underground Afro-tech stuff in that year. It wouldn't work because there was no clubs and people were not in a good mood anyway. So it's like you can't give them more to aggravate their mood that they're already in. So it was just like, you know, it's just like it changed the mindset to bring more, you know, obviously more feel-good factor tracks, more happier tracks. And then the process of going into Bali, as you mentioned, and what was the question in the first place? Going to Bali, I just took that risk, just went out there, played in little wine bars, and you're coming to a new audience, like a mixture of like, there's Burning Man crowds that go there, Tulum crowd. There was different types of people to go to, even Indonesians. They were more watched on techno and tech house, and EDM was like their kind of mainstream that was going on in the clubs. And then when you come there and you're playing Afro house, Afro tech, it's still electronic, it's still danceable. So it really got them into it, and it was fresh. So I just went to an island, just bang fresh vibes. You know, not necessarily they would have been relying just on maybe Natty Black Coffee that was just playing that, or Temba or Kudo de Zong, a few of the guys that only been out there. Now they could hear this regular in Indonesia. So it's basically given Indonesia, especially Bali as a party island and tourism, was to give them, okay, let's give them modern sounds, not all this old same stuff that they have for the last 10, 15 years. And yeah, it worked.
This seems like a dope journey. I need to get myself out there, that's for sure. And it's good to see like many of our artists and acts going over to places like Indonesia and Dubai and other parts across the world where maybe that wasn't happening so much pre pandemic. So it's just a great move, and just want to use this moment to give the flowers to you for putting out a lot of records that a lot of people support. Roman a Day is a massive record, but even the records that are now coming into more clubby kind of sounds and stuff, especially with your compilation, your latest compilation. It's just giving your flowers for like giving it a go. Because that's what it is really. You put your music out there and people receive it well. So you always got to get bigged up for that, for sure.
Thank you.
What's next for Aluku Rebels and Aluku Records? What can we kind of look out for the remainder of the year and moving into the following 12 months?
I feel like with label-wise, it's just a balance of club stuff and listening pleasure stuff. So it's going for musical stuff, as you've heard on the compilations. It's been like trying to get a balance of people. You're trying to get streaming and digital. In that digital and streaming market, you need to have stuff that people can listen to and dance to at the same time. So it's trying to get the balance of both. It's hard, it's tricky. I wouldn't say they're both immaculately doing well. You're just trying to give it a go. But I think importantly, a lot of labels are releasing similar sounds that are almost like same. So it's like, why not go a bit more out the box? And you never know that sound could actually be influential to modernizing where we want to go. So like Afro House, there's 5-6 different ranges, maybe more in the Afro House category. So it's like, can we find more that maybe could influence it into different fields? But most importantly, we all go on about Afro House, but when you look at Afro House or African electronic as a whole, it's a wider bracket. As when you play Amapiano stuff, you obviously got your Afro tech, I say, could be separate to Afro House. It's part of it, but it's more electronic. When you look at Afro House, there's soulful aspects, there's deep house emerging, coming back to life even more now in SA. So it's like, there's so much more going on now. I think no one's short of options to play different music, or to tamper with newer stuff.
100%.
We've all got options now, and you don't want to be that restaurant where you've got a fish and chip shop and everyone's got a fish and chip shop around you. You have to switch up the menu a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
So that's all it is, just kind of switching the menu. Yeah, just kind of, that's what you got to do, isn't it? Because if you've got the same consumers, you want to try to get other people, how can you make it interesting or to get appeal to it as well at the same time? That's different to anywhere else as well,
For sure.
So that's the hardest thing. But yeah, enjoying it.
That's dope, man. That's good. So I know that we've got some hot tunes ready here on these 3 decks. So we're really looking forward to the mix. And just want to thank you again for the time taken to come down here and do a mix for us. In the mix of many legends that have done mixes right here at the broadcasting house. So Aluku Rebels, I'd like you to take it away when you're ready. And thank you again for coming through.
Thank you.
Man. Nice one.
Long time. I'm good to be here.
I'm
going to play like a different range of stuff. Some stuff will be listening pleasure, some would be dance floor.
Okay.
So I'm just going to kind of balance a bit of both and see how people observe and take it in.
Yeah, wicked. Thank you again.
Is this it? We go, yeah? We just go?